all three because I never know who's watching and from where you are in your side of the world. So let's do a quick sound check. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'll move the microphone a little bit. There we go. Can you hear me okay? Is it too soft? Okay. As long as you can hear me when I'm speaking softly, then that will work. So it's a lot that I want to start out with today, in multidimensional awareness, and just kind of discussing that from some of the things that Seth has taught me. And I'm going to pull up my notes. And while I'm teaching from my notes, you'll notice that some of it is kind of a recapitulation of the last class and then an add-on to some of those principles as well. And if you have questions, it would be a good time, to put them in the ask a question section as opposed to chat. If you're new and watching for the first time, I like my questions there so that I can keep track of them. And I go through material first, and then when Seth says we're done with the majority of what he wants to share about this, then we can begin asking questions, to him. So excited to have you. I really like this particular being because he works hand in hand as a fractal of Halal. And you know how I feel in connections with Halal. So that's a big deal for me to do that. So um, let's just kind of, he's pulling me to the place in my notes that he wants me to start, but I'm having a hard time finding that place. Give me a second. So let's talk about the physical universe first, because he said that's the majority of understanding, in the collective at this time when people aren't really aware of what's fully going on. We choose something. And that choosing is also what Halal calls the great forgetting. And as you begin to go through what Lilith calls the great remembering, there are a lot of little parallels and bridges of time that you can cross very quickly when you get deeper into your innate senses. And what I mean by innate senses would be different than what you think I might be saying. So Seth does in the physical universe say we can use, our five senses. And we can also use, what most people know as a sixth sense as well. And when you say sixth sense, that's very generic and general for a lot of seeing and hearing and feeling and all of that. You can use that as well. But beyond that, when you start to consider what is an actual innate sense that doesn't come from psychological constructs, that's your head, mental state, and what is a sense when it doesn't come from sight from physical eyes, hearing from physical ears, feeling in the physical body, which is what I often call physical mediumship in my master classes. So what is a sense outside of that? That's some of the things that I'd like to discuss today with him, because his degree of seeing is an internal seeing and a tapping in to sight that is beyond the physical eyes. Most people think of clairvoyance as being able to see a spirit, an energy, something, of the psychic awareness point, in the psychic dimension, to be able to see that with your physical eyes in front of you or on the side of you. Some people describe clairvoyance as that, and that is not an innate sense. That is actually more of something that comes from physical eyes. Does it work with innate clairvoyance from within you? From a deeper psychic sense, it does, but it comes through physical form. So that has been, according to Seth, a big misperception And highly misconstrued as being what a psychic sense is when you see something, you think it means seeing something with your physical eyes that would be allegedly outside of you. What Seth would like to share with you is that the actual innate senses that come from the psychic realm of you, that's spirit and essence of spirit is what he calls that, that clairvoyance is actually closing down the mind, closing the physical eyes, and tapping in and seeing something in a different way. So, some people call that claircognizance, by seeing images in your mind. But that's only true when your mind is really, really quiet. That's what he says. And he moves his hands like that. He's really, really quiet. He has a unique accent that I don't dare attempt to duplicate. So speaking of physical universe, what he wants to tell you is that tapping into the psychic universe and the electric universe, tapping into the cosmic universe, is not about seeing with the physical eyes something that's out here. When you think about senses, tapping into the psychic universe is not about what your senses can do from the physical universe. It's an incredible misperception, particularly in New Age ideology and teaching. So you can ask me any questions you want about that, because he encourages us to close down the mind, focus on our breath, and pretend that there's an inner kingdom within you, and pretend that you don't know what it looks like, that you have zero reference point to knowing, but you're going to allow it to come to you, and you're going to see it in a new way, and with your eyes closed, and you're going to peer inside of yourself quietly. This is how you use and tap in to that innate sense. So if you want a little bit of a reference point on what he's talking about, he discussed it a lot in the book Seth Speaks, and he gave a specific technique, and he said you need to close down the mind and just focus on hearing your breathing and nothing else, and just try to close down the mind so much that there's just nothing but blankness. And within that blankness, you're going to pretend that there is an inner kingdom within you, an inner universe. I don't care what word you use, he likes both. So pretend that there is an inner universe within you and ask to see it. If any other thought comes, push it away and focus on the black nothingness and just wait. Something will begin to be revealed, and it won't be something that makes sense. Chances are you will not be seeing, a big giant kingdom of gold, with some kings and queens sitting there, something that you can understand. When you tap into the innate kingdom of God within you, when you tap into the multiverses of universes within you, you won't know. The brain doesn't know what it's looking at, okay? And when you're looking in for the first time, the first thing you see is blankness, okay? You want to get really used to that and be very patient with yourself. And just kind of keep breathing those thoughts away and be comfortable with seeing blankness and blackness until you begin to just sense something with your other senses. What he means by other is actually something you don't know right now, because human society is so conditioned in spiritual teachings that seeing is seeing something out here, that's what clairvoyance is, but it isn't. That's not how to tap in to the cosmic universe or the electric universe or the psychic universe. Okay, so let's talk about what the physical senses aren't before he can explain what they are. So you've got one sense, that sight is internal. You'll begin to see little blobs of energy. They'll start to kind of take form, but not in a way that you will recognize. Okay? That's inner sight. That's from the degree of psychic senses that would not be from sight from the physical eyes, the cones and rods in your eyes, and would not be sight that you see when you open your eyes out here. It's not a reflection where you look at something and close your eyes and see an internal reflection. that your mind tried to duplicate. It's not that either. It's very, very different. So practice that, okay? So there's that particular type of psychic sight that isn't physical. In psychic hearing, this true innate sense, psychic sense, not body sense, it comes from hearing a sound that's inside of yourself that feels more like a song or the beginning of a song. So when you start to hear in this way, it is incredible. And it's nothing that you can really identify, but a lot of people will say things to me when they start tapping into true clairaudience from an inner nature. They'll say it sounds like angels singing or something that doesn't have words, that is a really beautiful, unidentifiable sound. Okay? So there's that. Here's what people have misconstrued that and misunderstand and misperceived. He says a lot of beings have perceived true clairaudience as beginning with ear ringing, tapping, static. Those things are actually your physical ears reacting to the inner bones inside of the ears changing. So that is a physiological condition that begins in external clairaudience, but it's not internal. Okay, so that sound, this is where source tones came from. I could hear that before I would hear anything external. I could hear that and always can. Like, this sounds are always deep within me. Many of my masters in spirit have called that divine sound current. In the Sikh tradition, they call this, that this is like the deepest God that there is, this sound. And they call it the sound guru within you, is the English interpretation for that concept. And it's the God of sound within you, guides you at all times. You hear and feel and get to know that sound. And to the Sikhs, that sound is God. And they call it the Shabd. That's spelled Shabad. And it's like when you chant a Shabd, you begin to hear sounds of God within you, right? Okay, and then we can talk about physicality in terms of physical mediumship and clairsentience, which is what people teach as clear feeling. The feeling is an emotion when it is true. True clairsentience of the psychic sense, tapping into that inner world of the senses, not from the physical, not things that the ego says feel, is a very deep peace and bliss and love. It's really hard to explain, but these are the closest human words that he can give you. I like to call it grace. So that true anahata, heart chakra, if you will, feeling, divine feeling, is from like the true heart within you, is the closest I could describe, is a feeling of peace and love and bliss. It's just a very innocent, all is well type of feeling. And it is incredibly exciting to feel it, because when you feel that, you know that everything is okay. There's no fear that crops up within that. And not having fear present for the first time in your life, when that happens, many yogis call that samadhi. So samadhi is that ultimate stage of yoga that's a part of the 8 limbs of yoga, the 8 branches there. And samadhi is allegedly one of the final states of enlightenment, right? Before realization. And it's, when deeply put, it's that feeling that you get before enlightenment, because you don't feel fear ever. Like, for the first time in your life, it's so exciting to not actually have fear as an undercurrent to every single thing. And you just bliss out, right? So ultimately speaking, that's what will happen when you tap into an innate clairsentience, an innate sense, not a physical one. Physical one is more like a temporary physical feeling of connection that will come primarily from the body. Like you'll get kind of cold or hot or chills. Some people call it spirit bumps, angel bumps. Many people call it various things. So that's physical, which is completely different. Okay. Or sometimes when you're tapping in to a being and you're sensing a fear, if you sense fear, that's a clairsentience that's physical. If you sense anything other than the grace energy, that's probably just something coming from a human emotion. Okay. So let's stop there with questions for a moment because I see that we already have 10. Before I let him go forward, we'll do that. Does sound transcend all dimensions? He says, well, you could, if you are perceiving dimensions from lowest to highest. No, it depends upon what sound you're talking about. A sound that also causes grace, yes. A sound that does what? What type of sound, with the sound, divine sound current, then it's nothing to transcend. So the concept of the question itself would be not so accurate because true dimensions in the multiverse are parallel and they are happening simultaneously, versus third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It's more like center point, extend out from there and expand it, then look down upon it and notice how all those little points connect. You just need to realize that all that expansion is happening simultaneously. So sound actually transcends time, he says. Okay. This is why sound is just incredible. Okay, let's take a peek at all your questions before I move on. Are some of us able to perceive more than 4 universes? It's possible. Seth had a primary belief that there are 4 and that all other dimensions were within those universes. So he says that's a matter of semantics and counting, which he's not a real big fan of. So what he taught and still teaches is that there are 4 primary universes, and within those universes are dimensions, and dimensions are constructs of time. That's why we make them lower and higher, because it's the only thing that the human brain can comprehend. Okay. So the short answer is yes, but it's just a matter of semantics of what we're talking about here, he says. Kind of same theory, but different question from Roger. Besides the 4 parallel universes and the hidden one, are there also divergences that we can learn from, explore? He said it's all within it and it's all within you. There's nothing to separate or divert from. How can we tell if we still have contracts? He said, still have a body? And did like that. Then you still have a contract. Next question, can you tell us a bit about the changes and effects our human thoughts have on spirit environments that we do not perceive or see happening when we choose to entertain them? He said, well, that's just a boiling cauldron of information, and depending upon what frequency you're using in your thoughts, it could have an effect on various environments in any of the 4 universes. So a negative thought can be very squashing, he says, to another version of you in a physical universe. Not so much to a version of you in a non-physical universe, and not at all in the cosmic universe. So a negative thought in a physical universe, and there's another you in this parallel universe, could completely cause that part of you to be off track. If you entertain that thought and believe it to be true, you've created a conditioned system in that other version of you in the parallel universe in which they exist. You have created a conditioned system instantaneously. And you can undo it right away. He says, so don't, feel so incredibly frightful about this information, he says. A loving thought can do the same. A powerful loving thought can be as effective as a powerful fearful thought in a physical universe. A powerful loving thought in the electric universe can cause for, so much expansion within the version of you that is in the physical universe. There's nothing expanding in electrical universe. It's more about in the electrical universe connecting so that you who is in the physical universe become aware of the you that is in the electrical universe. And when that happens, there are energy links that you become aware of them. And you call them cords, you've called them many things, he says. So when you become aware of that energy cord, you can then hold more access to your innate true psychic abilities and things that would only occur in the electrical universe, like a loving thought could cause the you in the electrical universe to levitate, fly, provide full access to grace so that when you become aware of it in your senses, you then in the physical universe could lay hands on someone and perform a miracle. Do you see what he's getting at there? So he said, that's a whole cauldron of teaching. You just opened a whole can of worms for him that he will get to later. Reading the next question from Maria. In your book, Eternal Validity of the Soul, you speak about a physical and psychic barrier, a mental and psychic barrier that separates us from those in non-physical forms. And I will assume awareness to the other realities that coexist within our environment, yet on a different frequency. Is it possible to break down those barriers to be in the same frequency as these other realities? If yes, how can we achieve it? He said, it's not a matter of achieving. Please keep it in mind that it's a matter of awareness of that other existence. And it's more of a matter of getting the mental barrier out of the way. The mental barriers are fears, fear, hatred, resentment, being self-critical, feeling unworthiness and powerlessness. Those are anger and resentment are two of the biggest barriers to the non-physical forms in both the electric universe and the cosmic universe. So you literally cannot access your higher self when you feel that, right? What you call the higher self is just the fully empowered you that is without mental and psychic barrier, okay? So he said it's more about getting that out of the way and choosing to feel fully with your innate senses something that is of a higher quantum level, in emotional presence, in its emotional fabric, in its emotional fiber. You need to choose something other than those things he lists. And shame is another block as well, like that kind of underlies all of those other frequencies that he just mentioned. Okay. Is there such thing as quantum universe? He said that is cosmic universe. He now calls that cosmic universe. And it's all, again, so many semantics for the same thing, he says. Can you go into samadhi without sitting in meditation? I have heard the wonderful music and wondered what it was. Yes, that is your deepest connection to that. Divine sound is your deepest connection, because sound, when accessed from pure love, can break through the mental and psychic barrier that blocks you from all other dimensions. This is why, you know, teachers that start from sound get pretty far with their students. And this is why, you know, I bring source tones. This is why I do grace tones. This is why I record albums. This is why I'm singing all the time, if not externally, definitely internally, you know. So my first samadhi was because of bhakti yoga, and because I was also chanting a shabd at that time. So it's just that. Any chant that brings you to that. It doesn't have to be a source tone. It can be anything that feels sacred to you and brings you into the quantum frequency of grace. And it doesn't have to be, to answer your question, it doesn't have to be in meditation. It's just that during meditation, you can more quickly eliminate, because you're being quiet, you can more quickly eliminate and push out of the way the mental and psychic barriers. That is why it works more, because you are more aware of your breath. And breath is the tool for the awareness of divine sound, you know. What is the difference between being a fractal of, say, halo, or being an incarnation? He says, again, semantics can be your friend or not. Words, language, they can be your friend or not. So when we mean fractal, we just mean, and everyone is to a certain degree, but when you are incarnated as a fractal of halo, you will become aware of it at some point, most of the time. So that's really the only difference, the awareness of it. So there could be, you could be a fractal of halo, and you understand that everybody is. When you're incarnated, eventually you'll become aware of it. Everyone already is. It's just a matter of if you're aware of it, and if how much you've tapped into that particular frequency of your personality essence, he says. Okay. And that's for a fractal of anyone. And halo represents wholeness. So even the term fractal is, he says, is more of a deep journey away from what he's trying to get you to understand to begin with. Seth only uses that term because you have a reference point to what it means that is closer to the true understanding of this. Next question from Jackie. Now keep in mind, I've got about 7 more questions, and if I keep answering them, it'll be hard to finish the material, just so you know. So if you pile them on me now, after just the first section, he won't get to talk about the other universes because we'll run out of time. It's okay to pile them on me now, but I'm just letting you know that that's what that will cause. From Jackie, I heard that this period of darkness is the collapsing of all parallel timelines into one. He said, no, that's an interesting story, because if everything's one to begin with, why does it collapse? The term collapse normally means that something is high and it goes down, or it's wide and it flattens. The nature of God is expansive, not collapsing and contracted by nature. So that theory is not one that he aligns with. Yeah. She also said, in addition, we are merging these different aspects of ourselves that we created into one timeline. He said, the nature of God is to operate simultaneously in all timelines. So why would we want to be in one? It would be against the expansive nature of your divinity, creatively. So it's not about merging aspects, because when you become aware that you're the same thing, you simply are aware of what universe that aspect is in, what is their personality essence, and then you teach them and they teach you, and you're pretending to be separate, but you're all aspects of the same. And you can call this merging into one timeline if you choose to no longer be in a form and be in oneness, then you would no longer have that experience. And in that essence of teaching, in oneness, that would be true. But then you would not have a body. And the nature of a creative God is to be in many, 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 many bodies, many forms simultaneously, to become aware, and not to be in one timeline, but simply to become aware of the beautiful, expansive experiences that you are all teaching each other when you pretend to be separate. How can knowledge of this info help us in our daily lives here on Earth? He said it can help you get out of your own way and become more aware of the true nature of how God creates. And insofar as how it helps you in your daily lives, that is completely up to you. If you are experiencing the feeling of separation, that is not expansive. The understanding of the truth of parallel creative universes and parallel non-creative universes brings you deeper into understanding why God chose to create to begin with, which means that if you're feeling lost, separated, abandoned, alone, unworthy of love, when you understand the expansive nature of God, you understand that you must be worthy, you must be powerful, it must be true that oneness exists and that creativity also can make sense. And you begin to create a more sane, productive, creative environment for yourself on all levels. You understand more of what you can do, and then what you think you cannot transcends. How do we consciously know when we have been in one of those parallel lives? Question from Indira. He said, the fact of the matter is at this time that the majority of humanity is walking around without even knowing their own breath, without even knowing their own bodies that they created to begin with. If they were to start there, breath is a guideline, it is a guidance, it is a manual to get outside of the definitions and conditions that you have created, which prevent you from being consciously aware of such parallel lives. Start where you are. It's not a matter of suddenly becoming aware of parallel lives based upon a psychic phenomenon, because although that happens and occurs, it is infrequent. Start where you are and understand the beautiful, glorious, divine blueprint that you have been given in this exceedingly complicated yet powerful machine of the body and of the mind. You created it and you have given it yourselves for a purpose. But you often ignore it in light of something bigger, better, higher, more beautiful. And that won't get you far in a creative environment. You cannot be aware of anything outside of yourselves. Start with yourselves. Why do people see hell in a near-death experience? He said, well, most certainly their minds have created it. And they have created that experience based upon the presence of energy that is powerful. And this energy is fear. They have created a belief from this very palpable cellular nature of fear that can then present itself in a certain dimension. Because they believe they are unworthy, because they believe they must be punished, because they believe God will abandon them in a dark, fiery place. It is not up to me to determine why they did it. Their belief systems, if innately questioned, will tell them why. And it is primarily for one of the beliefs that I mentioned. Perhaps they believe they are unworthy of God and thereby deserve punishment. Perhaps they believe that they should be shamed. Perhaps they believe something. And then they create it in an etheric universe that then becomes physical until they choose to no longer believe something. Next question. Aside from multiverses, he said, there is no aside from. It all is. It's all within that. And he went like this and said, go within that theory. Don't go outside of it because there's nothing outside of you and all multiverses are within. Right? String theory. Okay. You want to talk about string theory. String theory calls for 11 dimensions. He said, semantics. Dimensions are all within the 4 universes. And then there are various dimensions that hold access to not 1, not 2, not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of other parallel planes of existences within each of those 11 dimensions that are contained within those 4 universes. And that is the nature of the multiverse, but it is all within the multiverse. I want to continue your question, but he just won't let me. He wants you to shorten it, and he says that these are scientific theories that are all based upon headstrong theories, an analysis that is overly done. He tells me to just drop to the base of your question at the bottom because the theory is inaccurate. Oh yeah, okay, here's the nature of your question right here. Sound supposedly only travels within an atmosphere and can't travel in a vacuum of space. He said, and physics lied. Any further questions? Physics, and even the nature of, is contained within the laws of a physical universe. So of course you can't interpret that when you continue to refer back to physical law. He said you need to think way in a very different way here within this. It is very restricted if you base your question all upon those laws. Okay, can some dreams be parallel lives? He said most certainly, almost all of them are. It's a matter of a life in a mental universe, mental and physical, a life in an electric universe and very psychic, a life in a cosmic universe, a life in, the unknown universe. It's just a matter of, if you can relate to it, it's probably physical or mental universe, if you understand what you're seeing. And if you can't, it could be one of the various others. So lives generally occur in physical and mental universes. But there are other access points in dream time. And you're not always having a mental physical connection to a dream in a mental physical universe. So pay attention when it doesn't make sense. It could be a parallel you operating in a realm that you don't quite and cannot possibly quite comprehend yet. Okay, got through those questions. Let's go back to class material for a little while. So going back to more of the laws of the physical universe, is one of the multitude of universes that he calls the multiverse. And you then create systems, what he calls systems of reality in a physical universe. And some are physical in nature, and some are mental and emotional, and some of the dimensions in any of the physical universes are completely foreign to human concepts. So they each have their own set of natural laws, and these laws, they would not make sense because the language is nothing that your brain would comprehend right now. So each of the laws of these universes could be just as valid as any of the others in a physical universe that you do comprehend. So, just similar to the many worlds hypothesis, that he discusses, our physical universes have multiple, what he calls potentials of reality or probabilities. So this is why I, as a psychic being, Pamela, born with certain innate abilities, both in physical in nature and non-physical in nature, that tap into all universes, actually. I have a hard time with, when people ask me to predict the future. The future actually doesn't make sense to me anymore. After full realization, when people ask me to predict the future, I'm like, how much time do you have? Because the thought that you have just right now just created 5 different potentials based upon those 5 different emotional frequencies. The thought became 5 different flavors or versions of an emotion, only 3 of which were identified in a physical universe, and 2 of which you don't even know about yet. Therefore, how can I tell you about that reality? Because it's in another world that you cannot possibly fathom right now. But the other 3 even are probable, depending upon how powerful your belief system is, how powerful your system of reality is in your beliefs. It's going to create emotion that's just as palpable and powerful, that could become form instantly. And if you're kind of unsure about the belief, if you're kind of just wondering, that's kind of it might be instantly, depending upon how powerful the state of wonder is. So wonder, to me, when I look at it energetically speaking, Seth describes wonder as a cauldron, and he shows me, and no, Merlin, not now. These times. Merlin's like, it's almost my turn. Like, it isn't right now. So cauldrons of energy. And, depending upon what you're putting in there, that concoction could become very powerful. And Merlin just said, haha, I snuck in. Haha. Great. So get out of my head. Thank you. I don't get along very well. So thank you, Seth. Cauldrons of emotion, emotional energy, that could be, gosh darn it, Merlin, could be very explosive. This is not going to happen. We cannot separate, he said. By your own law, you cannot separate us. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Didn't know he was going to show up today. Okay, so probable renditions, then just within that cauldron of energy, from what you appear to think and realize consciously is one thought pattern that creates what you think is one belief, it kind of splits off. This is how powerful we are, right? And you can only be aware of up to 3 at a time, according to Seth, if you are unawakened. And the more you are aware of how to tap in to all of the kingdoms and universes within you, the more you can have an access to everything that's in that cauldron. Every time he comes back in, Merlin, he goes, haha, it's back to me. Saucy thing. Yeah. Yeah. I don't really, we'll talk about his name later. Someone said I thought his name wasn't Merlin. It isn't, but I'm saving that for the channeling. He just decides to come in anyway, even though I didn't call his name. If he decides, he just decides. That's how powerful of a being that he is. If you lost sound, just refresh. Probably you can't hear that. Merlin said, she can't hear you say she lost sound. All right, back on track. Physical universe, there's a cauldron. Your emotions that you're aware of are not all that's at play. Breath causes more awareness of the renditions of emotions that could possibly exist, going back to Seth. So then any event, any action which is likely to occur in one potentiality, in one universal alone, that's connecting to from that thought, will be actualized in that or possibly another universe that, again, you might not even be aware of. And this is, again, why I can't stand predicting the future. Can't stand it. When people come to me for readings and they'll ask me about the future, I'm like, here's what you're aware of, which means these are the 3 potentials that are likely to happen. And I have called those potentials as a teacher divine will, free will, and karma. Just for lack of better reference point that people would actually comprehend. Okay? Because those terminologies lend access to other universes that people aren't aware of, particularly divine will. You start to understand the nature of all probable realities being perfect to begin with. You don't even try to predict them, correct? You guys see where I'm going with this teaching? All right. He tapped with this little thing. Remember last time when he showed up, Seth, and he had the little teaching one, and he taps on things when he wants to get your attention. He tapped like this on my desk and said, "On point, student, on point, get back, get back." He thinks I'm distracted. Well, I am, because there's a badass wizard sitting next to me now. So going back to Seth's teachings about this, if anything is likely, the more aware you are of yourself, within the examples that he gives you, these potentials or probabilities within your access to probable universes, you could go very far with that. Perhaps dinosaurs are still alive and existing and quite well, and just, stomped out one of your ancestors and squashed him, fear, powerlessness. Perhaps you're riding on the back of one of those dinosaurs right now, and you're able to reach some leaves that you're going to feed your children with and create a nice little yummy alchemical stew. Get out of my head. I'm telling you, this is why I'm going strictly to Halal and Lilith. This right here is funny to you guys, but I can't teach this way. So within that, there are probable universes. 20 minutes later on the same universal thing, and I want to talk about the other universes, but I'm highly distracted from a wizard right now. You can see where I'm going with that. So there are probable universes where Christianity didn't develop, wars didn't happen. There are probable universes wherein wars happen, and right now the human race is extinct. True. Not my world, not my universe, as Dolores often says. Okay. So each individual soul, because you are so powerful, you have many counterparts, many, fractals or counterparts. Halal calls them fractals, Seth calls them counterparts. And you have many counterparts of thoughts as well. If you have a fear-based thought, there is a part of you experiencing something in a physical reality with the opposite of it right now. So this is where physics makes sense. Everything has an equal and opposite reaction, right? That's where that comes from. It's true. It's just a matter of what you're going to put your focus on. It will not be a cauldron. Sorry, he's still here. When you realize this, these counterparts with these probable renditions of yous, these probable outcomes within probable universes, not all of whom have the same name, occupation, personal relationships, that extend into contracts, missions, alignments, spiritual gifts, purposes, if you will, all according to Seth, different names for the same thing. All of these systems of reality are what he calls camouflages, because they're stories. Halal calls them stories. He calls them camouflages. Okay. And the reason why he calls them camouflages are all beings have an existence which is actually independent of any system of what we could possibly think of as reality. So that's why when you have an essence of personality that is within a system, it's a camouflage to some deeper part of you, okay, that you are not aware of yet. Okay, so no system of actual reality is closed. Nothing is finite. Nothing begins, nothing ends. Energy and information simply pass through all systems the more you become aware of them. Okay, so for instance, we'll talk and we'll touch again upon reincarnation, since that's one of the rules in many physical dimensions. There's a lot of misconceptions about it. We talked about that a little bit before, but there are some other systems that are like, I really don't find a use. And I call that system divine will. He calls it cosmic universe. Same thing for different, different words for same thing. Okay. So within that, some beings would say, I hold no use in this system of reincarnation as a rule. And some people say, I actually do like that rule, but I'd like to rest between incarnations. And while I'm resting, maybe there's another part of me that will be more active in another parallel plane of existence. And then I will remember that instead of the resting me that chose to rest after the alleged death of the other me in the physical plane. You guys following me? This stuff gets deep, right? So when an individual's reincarnated cycle is over, per se, because they decide it is, no reason other than that, it's nothing to achieve, they just decided, he says. It's not like we reincarnate in order to get some incredible mission and then like, yay, the contract is done and we don't have to anymore. All that's misperception too, according to Seth. We do it because we enjoy the expansiveness, and then the contracts, the missions, those are stories that we actually create in our heads. Yep. Good times, huh? But he can't just come right out and tell you that, even though he kind of just did. Because if he tells you that at a certain period of time and you're not there to be really awake or aware to understand what he just said, it could cause for immense states of depression and perhaps suicidal tendencies, because then the mind goes, well, really, if those contracts aren't true, if those missions aren't true, I actually don't feel good. So being that I don't feel well, why in the hell am I here? So that is the danger when you're operating in a fear-based environment, for you to say, I want to have access to the electrical universe and the cosmic universe before you have even broken down the system of fear. It's not very wise to ask for access to other universes when you don't even have a mastery of the physical universe that you are in, like the body and the mind and the breath, right? So this is how the awareness of such systems can actually be detrimental in a physical universe to an individual whose reincarnated cycle they have not decided is over. So before they decide it's over in the time constructs, they teach themselves that they have purposes and contracts and missions because they want to experience the whole cycle without selling themselves short of it. Funny what we do to ourselves, huh? But when that cycle's over, because the person just says, I really woke up now and I realize that all these things that I told myself about having purposes, having these things, all that was a dream, and I don't really have any use for doing it anymore. The individual soul moves on to other systems of divine reality. That's oneness, where there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's just this continued existence of pure spiritual bliss in those realms. And now I know he says they aren't going to possibly fathom this, but I'm going to try. In these realms, bodies don't exist because you don't need them. You are so unbounded, you are so free that you can't possibly even, you don't get bored with it. You are completely happy. There's no concept of another you, a body, physiological feeling. There's no concept of that. It's something so completely blissful and different than what happens when you identify with body, that you couldn't possibly right now. When I try to teach people about oneness, so far what has happened, if they're not ready for it, they just say, sounds boring. Yeah, you guys have done that? I know it. I feel some of you right now going, how could that possibly be okay? Well, you can't possibly understand how that could be okay right now, right? Because there's no brain point of reference to that. And when you still are in that system, unless you're a realized being with all tapping into all systems, you cannot possibly grasp that yet. So be patient with yourselves on that. Don't assume that oneness is boring when you know nothing of it. This is why Lilith advises highly against judging, right? When it comes to that regressive judgment anyway. So let's move on from reincarnation. He says, so going through what you've called, he discussed it in the last channeling of him, the outer ego. Every human in a physical universe has many, many layers. So we're going to go through some of those terms, some of those terminologies. Seth called one, the most notable layer, outer ego. So that is the level of you that primarily interacts with the physical world, that thinks that it is a mind and a body, and that all feelings and thoughts and pain is true. Okay. And then you have an inner ego, or sometimes something that's called inner self, same thing. Inner child is another synonymous word that he uses. All of that, right? So inner ego, inner child, inner self, which is more kind of concerned with how to bring feelings into a physical world, and this part of you existed in time prior to any of your incarnations. And then you have what he calls the entire self, okay? And when he refers to it, oftentimes he will say the entity, or the entity of self. So that is kind of this gestalt, it's this variety. It's consisting of various selves that, that you would through all of your, what you call past experiences, when you're in physical realities where time is a factor. It's like all of the yous in both physical and non-physical. So all of those universes of you. Some people call this entire self the soul, and some other people go deeper and call it the oversoul, but it's just kind of interesting layers and terms for the same thing. So when you have the entire self, which some people call higher self, but he doesn't like that term. It's all of that and all of the currently reincarnated selves of both inner and outer ego. That's what that is. That's what he calls entire self, or the entity, right? So according to him, a lot of people who aren't spiritually aware, they don't remember who they are, they aren't really aware of the inner self, much less the entire self. They're just primarily more aware of the outer ego, is what he calls it. And when inner self or inner child come in, it comes through as what they call inner intuition, or inner voice, or, spirit guides. That's what that is. So in Seth's teachings here, this thing that you think is separate is actually in a parallel universe, existing with full access to that voice. And they are teaching you in the physical universe to do the same. Okay. And then you realize that they are you and you are them, and you're just pretending that you're separate and pretending that you're teaching each other and playing these roles of fun. And then upon the body's physical death, his intuition and what he calls inner voice, that many people hear, when they're connecting to inner self at death, the outer ego, and this is how Seth is a little different. Seth is different than most beings in this sense. He believes outer ego can live on, it can continue to develop, and it can create these things. The outer ego is what creates things like hell, or, nasty near-death experiences, because it's still carrying it at that level, at a deep cellular level, a system of belief. If you create a heaven for yourself, that too is a system of belief that comes actually from outer ego, and it's still carrying through, right? So this means that heaven and hell are just dimensions of other electrical universes that we choose to create from our egos. How wild is that, right? Tears the theory of religion right apart into 1,000 bits and then kind of tosses it. just, yeah, blows it away with the wind. So the outer ego can then become a part of that entire gestalt of, what Seth would call the entire self that forms what Seth calls an entity. But it's free. It's free. This is, divine will is also free. It's not controlled. So the concept that in spirit, it controls everything. Yes, but who's doing the controlling? You, as spirit, as entire self, which means that everything that you think is being controlled by something external, because external doesn't exist, it's you the entire time. Now, for someone who's prepared and ready to hear that, that can be such a grand relief of freedom. And for someone who's not, they would be like, why in the am I doing this myself? Well, the why leads you down some rabbit holes that you really don't need to go down. This is not something that you need to undo. I was talking to Halal about this today, and he said, you need to abandon the term undoing. And I was very shocked, because in all of my selves, in all parallel universes that I'm aware of, the undoing has been a big part. I see it in texts everywhere, sacred texts. I see it mentioned, and I'm like, what? You wrote that in ACIM. What? You wrote that here? No, I saw that in Way of Mastery. What are you talking about? He said, the only thing that humans did with the term undoing, when it was meant to be a bridge of consciousness between the selves, so that the entirety of you could come together in full awareness, all that I meant for you to do was to undo the conditions that created beliefs, to undo the cultures that created these beliefs, to simply, as individuals and cultures, to change your minds about fear, about hatred, about war, about mass destruction, about nuclear weapons, so many things. And he went on and on. Simply change your minds. And that was the undoing. But what you did with the term undoing was you created process after process after process after processes as a means of doing something, which is counterproductive because you are a human being. The undoing meant just to breathe, to wake up, to remember. And now you're using process to undo the conditions that aren't helpful, to try to get out of your way, but now you're stuck in that process, doing it again and again and again and again. You're redoing the undoing. So because doing can't stop, when ego is in control, it is impossible to have access to the electrical and cosmic universes and to listen to voice when the doing continues and continues. So this theory became counterproductive over time, and he eliminated the term undoing from all of my writings in an instant. And I went, oh my gosh, I have so much editing to do. And he's like, stop it. Shocking, right? Yeah. Someone said, I don't love the word undoing. It's so counterproductive, right? Oh my goodness. So this class has just become a big old class. We might have to do more of this, because I'm starting to run out of time, and I need a little bit of a restroom and water break. So I'm going to do that, and I suggest you do the same, and I'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and we'll go on with more of his teachings. I'll see you in a minute. All right. Okay. Let's go back to my notes. This smoothie does not want to open. Sorry. Okay. So we talked about layers and ego living on after physical death and how it becomes a part of what people call higher self, what he calls the entity, or, what's the other word you were using for it? Entire self. So going back to your incarnated selves, no matter where they are and what universes, each incarnated fractal of you exist in 4 universes simultaneously. It is impossible for you not to be in all 4. Let's get that out of the way, right then and there, that whether you are aware of it or not, because God is omnipresent and omniscient and fully perfect, there is an aspect of you that is completely awake and aware and levitating right now somewhere. You can bet your sweet ass on that. Okay? Oh gosh, Lilith. The physical universe, so that's that. And it is, I'm really itchy in my face today. Itchy. The physical universe has, how can you explain that, please, Seth? He says the physical universe is more of an effect or accumulation or result of what you now call these days. He said you knew people call this newly awakened beings call this the human conscious collective. He used to call it coordinated mass mental projections or coordinated dreamings. Okay, so he can be very wordy. I like coordinated dreamings. He likes coordinated mass mental projections. So it's kind of the physical universe, and all of the dimensions within that is a result of many coordinated mass dreamings or mass projections. And that's on the part of all of you, on all of the incarnated selves that exist. And it is what he also calls a dream universe, because it is created from mass dreaming. It is a dream universe. So it's actually not real, no matter how real it looks, feels, seems, right? So it is created much in the same way as anything else, but it's the physical universe actually has some less rigid natural laws in a certain sense, and it's different. It's just a little different to dream, so in a certain sense, within physical universes, there are realms. So the dream realm within the physical universe this is where you dream that you're floating or flying. That is a realm of, or a dimension of, the physical universe, even though it doesn't appear to be. So that's something of that nature. So that's within that and parallel to that simultaneously. This is why you hear things about people bending spoons, because actually the dream universe is a part of the physical universe. It is just more connected to the mental, right? So you have that. And when you become aware of the dream universe, then you become aware of how that part of the dreaming is a part of your physical universe dreaming as well. And you connect the dots between the two. And this is what you're calling spiritual awakening. So physical universe, within it and parallel is a dream universe. And then it's created much in the same way as the physical universe, but it has a lot less, rigid natural laws to it. Like, again, you can float and you can do things, you can do flying, you can do all sorts of things, telekinesis, all sorts of things. And then you have another adjacent universe, which he calls the electro universe. We've talked about that a little bit today. And this is where what he calls the inner self, or what we these days call inner child, actually resides. And you refer to it now as the heart chakra. This kingdom of God is here in you, if we have to point out a part of the body, right? It most strongly relates to that. So it's where all mental and emotional activity occurs, and it connects the heart to the crown. So thought and feeling. Okay, thought becomes feeling. And when you're more connected to the feeling, then you go up into another universe that's here around the third eye area. And that is an anti-matter universe. Seth didn't talk very much about it. He also called it the unknown universe. So, so the electrical universe, that's where the inner self, the inner child resides. It's where thoughts and feelings actually happen. And then you become aware of them in your form, which is in the physical universe. And then when you begin to connect and using the dream universe as consciousness, you open both realms. And if that occurs simultaneously, you get access to the antimatter universe, finally. Not that you haven't had it, but you think you dreamt that you didn't have it. So when you wake up, you're aware that you're also in the antimatter universe, and you're calling that realization or enlightenment. Following me so far? I know that I'm like really going deeply into this, but I'm just trying to throw as much material as possible, and hopefully it'll make sense to you later, just in light of time. Let's see. So the various portions of self, fractals, if you will, whatever you want to call it, your incarnated selves, your reincarnated selves, whatever you want to call it, and the various universes, they are all aspects of a single whole self. You know, that's the whole self of you. And this is what you keep looking for. You keep like looking for a name for it, all those sorts of things, but it never has that. Sometimes I like to call it, Hela likes, we'll call it spirit. All right. And some people have called it oversoul, whatever it is. And the word soul, he said, can be more strongly associated with what he used to call inner self. And there are various names and personalities and experiences within that. Okay. And that's what you're actually trying to name when you come to me and say, what's the name of my higher self? Higher self and spirit, entire self, the entity, as Seth calls it, it doesn't actually have a name, because that would mean it have a personality, which would mean it's bound to physical and mental universe, and it isn't. It only does that when it's dreaming, and then it creates a soul, which has various fractals, which then become reincarnated simultaneously, and then you call that time, past, present, and future. Okay. So there are no boundaries like that to the entire self or spirit. You know, it's not, there are no boundaries to any system of reality except in the physical universe in form, right? So all parts of the self are valid and useful, creative or not. And, you know, ego or not, all parts of the self contribute to the dreaming. And then that continues when the outer ego is more awake and more aware of what's going on. And then you just keep continuing and expanding from there. Pretend that you're asleep again, wake up and continue and expand from there. And that is the nature of what many of you are calling universal games, right? So time and space, they're actually illusions. And, you know, again, past, present, future, the only thing that's really true is the present. So in truth of the entirety of all four universes, the past and the future coexist with the present. And this is something that Seth refers to as the spacious present. I like to call it the now. And then, you know, based upon his teachings here, a person's incarnations in different, you know, time periods are actually not the past, and nor are they the future. So when you go through regression and you're thinking it's the past, once you understand full universal law, and the four universes, you will not look at this the same ever again. It is so incredibly enlightening to know this, right? So all of those different time periods are lived simultaneously, as opposed to one, then the other, then the other. There's nothing linear about that. It's just that in physical dimensions, we perceive time and space as true. So we incorporate them into laws, natural law of the physical universe, but it's not natural law in the electrical universe or in the antimatter universe, nor is it natural law in the dreaming. So that's interesting that time and space are only laws to be considered in the surface level of what outer ego perceives when it is unawakened in a physical universe. So the next step would be to realize that it's dreaming, then enter the dream universe, then fully awaken and see and remember all of the ways that it is dreaming, and then garner all of its natural abilities based upon laws that are really not accessible when you're asleep and in the physical universe. And when that happens, you call that a great spiritual awakening. And then when you are accessing the electrical universe fully, and then you realize that you're accessing 3 other universes simultaneously, then you finally awaken to the 4th, and you're calling that enlightenment or realization or actualization. There, again, with these many terms for the same thing, okay? So when you are communicating amongst the various perception of past, present, and future yous, you do that primarily when you are perceived to be sleeping or meditating. And this is the dream universe. So time appears to exist in linear form, even when you're dreaming, because of the limitations that are still in the physical human brain that you have created. And when you're dreaming, you still think you're human and that you are organs and brains and stuff. Therefore, that's why sometimes in the dream universe, when you're dreaming, you're flying around and then you have this terrible dream that you fall. And then many of you say you'll literally fall out of bed, or you'll wake up with like a headache or a bruise or some things that you can't explain. Yeah. Or you'll come across an entity, and because you believe it's separate, you actually hurt yourself and blame it on that entity and then call it possession. So many weird things happen in the dreaming. I tell you what. So what Seth taught about this is that all individuals create their own experiences. You're creative beings, and you're doing this within this shared physical environment that you call Earth. And, similar to the doctrine of like responsibility assumption that we talk about a lot, when I say, if you're God, you're responsible for everything you see and you create your own reality. Seth frequently talked about that. And he may have been one of the first beings in our modern society insofar as channeled beings to actually talk about it. So when we think about time, he actually did this before Abraham Hicks did, right? So the inner self, that's the part of you that's going to be responsible for construction and maintenance of your physical body and of your physical environment and of everything that you've called the law of attraction, everything that you create. All the events, however, that happen for you in that environment occur according to the outer ego's beliefs, attitudes, and thoughts. And, like you said, fear or love, both productive or unproductive attitudes, are then translated into your reality. The more powerful the thoughts are, the quicker it happens. And you like to call that bad luck or karma. When karma is actually more of something that I like to call the law of action, which means that you're powerful enough to think it, feel it, and thereby create it, right? So that is one of the things that Seth believes, that we're meant to learn how to direct. So we're meant to direct our own thoughts in very powerful ways, preferably positively. So he often said, you guys watch the pictures that you're painting with your imagination. Wonder appropriately is the word that he uses now. Wonder appropriately, for you and only you allow your imagination to take full reign. So this is what I teach as well, that imagination is the vehicle for wonder, and wonder is the energy that is there at the base of all form. So, if you read Seth's early material, if you've done a lot of reading with him, you'll see that, your environment and the conditions thereof of your life at any given time are the direct result of your own inner expectations. So we talked a little bit about expectations in the last channeling. Much like what Halal and Lilith both teach, Seth believes that expectations can be, as Lilith puts it, an albatross around your neck. She's a little dark sometimes. She loves Edgar Allan Poe. That's where she got that word albatross. It was from a poem. When I read it once, she was like, "Oh, I like that word. We're going to use that a lot together." So the albatross around your neck in those, poems of Edgar Allan Poe, she loves him, is like a bird that really hungry, about to die sailors would see when things were just so bad. So she called it the albatross around the sailor's neck, meaning the sailor's about to die, right? And he puts it there because his fears get stronger and stronger and stronger. So expectations are that, the squeezing albatross around your neck. So you can have it that way with expectations. And positive expectations, if too lofty and not exactly in your frequency range in that moment, if you're not being real with yourself, can be just, this is where humans are like, wait a minute, I thought positively. I wondered positively. But you really weren't being exactly honest with yourself about where you are in your next most believable step of thought and feeling. So you hear about this all the time in Law of Attraction. When it first came out, did you guys watch The Secret? The Secret was incredible because everyone's like, what are you talking about? You mean I'm going to create a vision board with a Lamborghini on it? And it happened, and somebody made a movie about it, and you went for it. Man, you took that bait. Lilith said, you guys ate that up. So what they failed to tell you is that fear can do the same if it's just as powerful. But if you put something like, say, the Lamborghini or the end result of matter, when you don't even believe in your thoughts that you're worthy of it or that it can be possible to happen, it's just kind of the horse and the carrot. The horse, dangle the carrot, the horse comes, dangle the carrot. When you're trying to train a horse, it's the dangling carrot again. It doesn't happen because you don't believe it. So in the universal law of specificity, which is one of the laws of the dream universe, according to Seth, you need to specify. And this is why Halal teaches about intention all the time. You can't get anything without intention. You can't get anything without specifying what you want, and then thinking it, feeling it, and believing it. That is how the law of the dreaming works. Such an itchy nose today. Excuse me. So you begin to form very real materializations of these beliefs within your mind, and then you feel it, and then that feeling becomes palpable enough, then you start to say it. That becomes even more palpable and real in a physical universe, at least. And then you begin to do it, even in an unaware state. And this is how manifestation happens fast. And the more powerful those thoughts are, the quicker and more palpable and more real those manifestations are in the physical universe. So if Seth used to say, if you can imagine really dire circumstances or ill health or desperate loneliness, doesn't matter what it is, that will begin to materialize automatically at some level, and depending upon how powerful your belief is, it could be really tough right away, right? Cancers manifest out of thin air. Straight up, I've seen it happen very quickly, you know? And it's just crazy, like how powerful creators can do that. It's an insane environment. So try to keep your thoughts sane and loving. How do you know you're doing that? He wants me to talk about your attitudes in your personality. You can't escape that because it shows you and people tell you. You know, have you ever heard the thought where people will say, oh, it's starting to get to be a long class and I'm getting tired, that your attitude will come, like if you say something, it doesn't matter what you say, people will remember how you made them feel. Now, Lilith doesn't believe you can make anyone feel a certain way, right? They're you are them. If a person feels a certain way, they are responsible for feeling that way, no matter what you said. Now, that's her teaching. However, Seth has a little bit of an interesting belief about that, because when people say, you know, your attitude is there before you at all times, and no matter what you say, you could be saying the most loving thing, but if you say it with a negative attitude, that is the energy behind those words. You know, for instance, when someone says, I love you, I love, 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 love you, right? And you say that and you're feeling that right now, you know, and I love you so much that there are no words for it. I'm thinking of someone right now when I'm saying that. Okay. So now I'm going to think about someone who recently annoyed me, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say the same thing with a different energy. And you're going to feel this. This is called attitude. I just love you. I just love you. Man, gotta love you. You feel that? Because I'm thinking right now very powerfully about a being that triggers me into a very positive experience, and a being that triggers me to kind of just, I love them. Like, you can say this, people say this all the time, I love them as a human being. What you're really trying to say is that they annoy the absolute hell out of you, and they trigger you so much that you have to be a decent person by at least showing compassion and knowing that they're a decent human being. I love them as a person. I mean, I love them. You see where I'm coming from with energy as an attitude? I mean, I love them, but there's always a but that follows. When couples fall out of love, I'll just straight up, Lilith will come through, and a person will be sitting before me trying to decide whether or not to end a marriage. Happens, she does this all the time. She'll just say, so you want to know what to do? I'm not going to tell you what to do. Do you love them or not? And the person will say, well, I mean, I love them. I mean, I love them, but I'm not in love with them. Feel the difference? They're saying the same thing, but they're not. This is how you resonate your sound. You can have frequency and be aware of frequency, and you can practice frequency, but how do you resonate that frequency? Right? Okay. So that's just something that Halo likes to bring to mind all the time. All right. I think that's all right now, in my notes anyway, that I wrote down. So now I can answer questions for a few minutes, and then I'm going to go because I'll have to pick up my kids from after school programs. Oh, someone wants to know the names of the four universe. Physical universe, dream universe, electrical universe, and antimatter universe, or cosmic universe. Antimatter or cosmic universe. Okay. Next question. I am writing a creative novel. The characters and plot are flowing very fast and beautifully. when I imagine the book is already written and is reaching many people. I am simply transcribing the novel that is already written. Is there a good way to access another universe? He said, it seems like you're already doing it and you are accessing the dream universe. You are granted access from the electrical universe to the dream universe and then pulling this into the physical universe. Yeah, so you're already doing it, he says. The antimatter universe would not even hold reasoning or logic to create a form that you would call a book or a story. It would be the other three universes, and you're already doing it. Next question. I have heard you need to integrate the 12 different layers of yourself as a first step. Lilith said, who told you that madness? Is that part of moving into bigger self? Halal said, oh, great, more undoing that's actually doing, that's keeping you trapped in the belief that you have different things about yourself that need to be different than, better than, more healed. There's nothing, when you say you need to integrate, what you're really trying to say is you don't like that part of yourself fully. Therefore, you're going to pull it more fully into your awareness and make it more palpable, more acceptable. What you're really doing is becoming aware of something that's already there. So does it matter if there's 2 or 12 or 25? They're all you, and you don't need to find every single one. Otherwise, you'll be busy, busy, busy. Oh, no. That's me saying, oh, no, not him. Next question. In general terms, E equals MC squared energy is matter, and matter is energy. All dimensions, multiverses, spirits, life, and any probabilities for any event exist in the present. Then they all intersect around us, yet they don't interact, nor does it interfere with none. He said, oh, I beg to differ, dear one. And he did like that, tapped his little wand, teaching wand. He said, the more you become aware of the dimensions, the more they interact, and the more you become aware of how they're interacting and why you are utilizing a creative purpose and a timeline for their interaction. If they didn't interact, you would not have physical law. And if they didn't interact, you could never transcend physical law. And you would always believe that you are confined in a third dimensional universe that is physical in nature only. He wants me to continue with your question. So I'm going to reread that part of your question. They intersect all around us, yet they don't interact, nor does it interfere. Then if we picture it all like a battery that was once full and will become empty, then anyone can access anything and everything indefinitely within the spiritual realm. But we can master time as far as rewriting it. He said, well, yes, you're onto the theory of what I'm attempting to teach, but there's no re. Examine your wording when re. And the word rewriting it. Ha! What is happening in your environment right now? He said, everything and nothing simultaneously. Next question. Has Confucius ever been channeled? That's an interesting. Well, we have to end the class now, but I will say not by me. Not by me. Lilith said, everyone is everything and everything has been channeled, and then realization occurs, and then there's no need to even have this law that you've created that you believe something must be separate and channeled. That's something that she teaches a lot, is that I am her, she is me. I open my mouth and she's there, she comes out. And we can call it channeling because you still have these laws. But in essence, the moment I believe I'm Confucius, it could snap over if my belief is that powerful. And because I believe in oneness, I could. But this whole theory of it needs to be this personality, that personality, this personality, that personality can be incredibly distracting from the essence of who and what you are, which again is why, I decided to point, Halo and Lilith in your direction more what you call exclusivity and exclusive channeling, but it isn't, because they cover everything and everyone in complete wholeness. So in other words, if the personality essence of Yeshua decide to come through, am I as the channel going to say, don't separate that? No, I won't. It might be interesting for you. It might be fun. Just like how Merlin just completely crashed Seth's channeling 4 times. He gave a bow to that and his cape flew out when he did it. He was like, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, yeah, crashed the party, Merlin. Crashed it. Completely distracted me. Good job. So you'll get to hear from him. I think he's going to be coming through relatively soon this week. And we also have Helen Keller coming up. And I will see you guys very, very soon. I hope you enjoyed the class. It was a lot to cover. We may need a little bit more depth on that. So we'll talk about that next month if we need to do that again. Okay. I love you. Thank you for your support on this platform. This is the platform, like a lot of people got, I tell you, I lost like 60 patrons overnight when I decided to focus on Halo and Lilith. And I could have gotten scared over that. Or I could have just said, you know what? I appreciate the support of the people who are still here and understanding what I'm doing and being able to grasp the depth of how this is going to pull the teachings. Because you see how distracted that I got with Merlin coming in? I don't do that with Halo and Lilith ever. So it's very, very interesting. We lost a bunch of patrons overnight. And then I felt so grateful for those of you who are still here and helping support me in this platform, because the more support I get, the more time I have to give. And the more time I can give, these classes get more detailed. And I'm just so incredibly thankful for that support, to have this platform, to be able to teach to you in ways that serve you best and serve me best. And I'm thankful that you're still here. Overall is what I'm trying to say. And I just wanted to express that, from the depths of my heart. Thank you for still being here and for not running off and skipping town when I said I'm focusing on my heart's desire. Oh, Christina, ask them what's going on. Anya tell you maybe. Yeah. So if I'm less distracted, I can actually teach you more. So this is going to be an incredible journey. All right. Thank you for still being here for this. And I'm really excited. If you have questions about the new offers coming out for merchandise, I think it's like level 1 gets a sticker and level 2 and up gets something, but they are incredible. And you can now look and see that. It's right there on the Patreon site. And we captured our favorite quote by Dolores and put it on a coffee cup. And for people who are here 3 months or longer, get that, but you have to update your address in the system, because Patreon is the one who does all the mailing. If you're curious about refund policies, if anything breaks, they're really good. If you notify them within 7 days, I think that's right. Flavia's here to help me with that if I'm wrong. They won't give you something because you don't like the design or some personal preference. They won't give you a new one. But based upon your level, you get one of those things, if you've been at that level for 3 months or longer. But you must put in your address or you won't get it. So they're incredible. And I had to pay more for that. So the percentage that I paid for that got significantly higher. And simultaneously, I lost 60 patrons from making an incredibly powerful decision. Right? So that's going to be interesting. I'm really, really putting a lot of trust and a lot of money into this right now. A lot of trust. So I hope that you really enjoy the merchandise, because it's me who pays for that. And if you have any problems with it, if you get any broken shipments, just contact Patreon, please, not me, because I don't do the shipping and I don't do the refunds. I don't do any of that. It's all them, and I pay a nice pretty penny for them. And we can thank both Erin and Flavia for the beautiful designs, and for sizing it appropriately and doing all the work that it takes to answer all your emails and do all of my graphics and designing. They are incredible. And thanks to you sticking around for a month, I was able to pay them. I could pay them this month. It was great. Not as much as last month, but I was able to pay them for this month. I love when I can pay my team. So your support makes that happen. Thank you so much for still being here in September. I just really, really, really appreciate that. It made it a lot easier that you didn't all go away when I decided to focus and pinpoint on Halal and Lilith in such a powerful way. So someone said, oh, you're stuck with me. That's good, because I'm going to see you, Rosemary, at Samantha O'Hearn's Goddess Retreat coming up there at the last weekend of the month in October. So I'm really excited about that. So for those of you who are going to see me there, I'll get to give you a big old hug. And that's exciting. Someone asked me today, am I doing channelings and readings and any blessings and healings there at the event? I am, but you can't prepay for them. And there's a reason for that. I really don't want money to be a deciding factor of that. You know, do I want to be supported and help pay for my plane tickets there? Absolutely. So I will need to do sessions when I'm there, but I can't let you pay them in advance, because I just don't want money to be so much of a factor in this. I don't want someone, you know, who wants to donate more than what's on the website to not be able to do that. And I don't want someone who can't actually afford that to not be able to get a reading either. So I want there to be discussions about money in person, and for you to pay me in person, and for there to be a first come, first serve, you know, so that everyone's kind of just feeling good about it and about readings at that event. We're going to do them, but I'm just not going to make money the sole focus of that situation. I just can't. So you cannot prepay. All right. You just can't, you know, because there might be something that just leaves people out in that. It just doesn't feel quite right. So I'll see you there. And I'll see you later this week for another channeling of a being who likes to disrupt all of my other classes, apparently. Merlin. Scroll back for those of you who just getting to this class. He completely took over this class like in four different ways and distracted all of us. It was hilarious. So I'll see you guys for that soon. I love you. Thank you for your support in this platform. Thank you for your friendships. And for those of you who are seeing me in person in October, can't wait for it. See you soon.